Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to everyone who is joining us today. My name is Matthew Bremen, and I'm the Global Director of YEO 2030. Youth Economic Opportunities 2030 is an initiative of Making Sense International, designed to unite young people and the global ecosystem of changemakers, that's all of you, to maximize youth employment and achieve sustainable economic growth by 2030. I'm excited to welcome you to today's event, a very exciting event, Generation 2030, USAID Celebrates Youth Partnerships. USAID has been a global leader for youth and positive youth development for many years, the first global funder to put in place a youth and development policy back in 2012, and now trailblazing the way for others with a revised policy focused on improving youth access and participation in decisions that impact their lives. This is highlighted in USAID's underlying commitment to promoting the inclusion of all youth in decisions that impact their livelihoods, namely those traditionally marginalized, such as young women, youth with disabilities, out-of-school youth, and the rural poor. YEO 2030 is excited to co-host this event as part of our partnership with USAID. When we invite you to join our initiative that does three things. One, it partners with young people to define challenges and solutions. It addresses key issues affecting YEO globally through learning events and convenings. And it collaborates with the global YEO stakeholder community to take action and advance achievement of SDG 8. And on that last point, we invite you to continue the conversation by registering for our upcoming virtual Global YEO Summit, which will be on May 19th. An opportunity for the global YEO community to network with youth-led and youth-serving organizations, policymakers, and funders, and be inspired by YEO 2030 champions to take action as we collectively help advance the achievement of SDG 8. The registration link can be found in the chat. Now, without further ado, I would like to introduce you to Gael Ramamunsu, our MC today. Gael is a 2014 Young Africa Leadership Initiative Fellow, YALI Fellow, who has devoted the past 10 years of her life to volunteering for different causes with local organizations in Madagascar. She created a youth service organization called One Way for Change, which matched Madagascar youth with volunteer opportunities across the country. She currently works as a manager for USAID's Youth Lead platform, which supports 13,000 young changemakers from 191 countries to connect and collaborate on meeting key development priorities linked to the Sustainable Development Goals. Welcome, Gael.
Thank you, Matthew. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening again, everyone, and welcome to everyone who is joining us from around the world for today's event in celebration of the updated USAID policy for youth in development, Generation 2030. USAID celebrates youth partnerships. My name, as Matthew said, is Gael Ramamunsu. I am an Atlas Core Fellow and a current Youth Engagement Fellow with Youth Power 2 Learning and Evaluation WAPI2LE at Making Sense International. In addition to being your MC today, I am one of the 2.4 billion faces of youth that are part of USAID's Generation 2030 partnerships, which seek to support young changemakers through their new youth in development policy. Born and raised in Madagascar, like many young people around the world, I also recognize that while talent is equally distributed among youth, opportunity is not. That's why I'm so thankful for donors like USAID, because they provide young people like you and I with opportunities. So over the next hour and a half, we will hear from young changemakers and organizations who are working together to advance USAID's commitment to inclusive development through youth engagement. Let's begin with one great program example, which is Young African Leaders Initiative, or YALI. For me, YALI is so close to my heart as it was my first leadership opportunity. If my personal leadership journey was a book, you can think of YALI as literally the first chapter. And speaking of YALI, I have the pleasure of introducing you to our first speaker, the National Security Council Senior Director for Development, Linda Etam. Among many accomplishments, Linda helped launch the YALI program, for which I am forever grateful. Words are not enough to say all the wonderful things she's been doing and is still doing, but here's an overview. Linda Etam is an advocate leader with close to 20 years of experience in government, crisis management, global health and development, policy-making analysis, democracy and human rights, and multilateral affairs. She passionately integrates her expertise in foreign policy and humanitarian response in the fight for equal dignity and rights of all persons. She is committed to creating a world where individual freedoms and potential are realized. Linda is joined by one of our youth speakers today, Imrana Buba. Imrana is from Nigeria and is the founder of the Youth Coalition Against Terrorism, which is a volunteer-based youth organization that aims to unite young people against violent extremism in northern Nigeria. He has conducted multiple research projects and co-authored a report related to youth development. He's a member of the Queen's Young Leaders in the UK and recently participated as the youth speaker at UN ECOSOC. He's also a fellow of Leap Africa SIP and YALI West Africa. In addition, he's a part of the Youth Excel Youth Advisory Group. Welcome, Linda and Imrana.
Thank you, Gail. Thanks for the warm welcome. And I join you in your excitement in joining all of these people from around the world today to launch the updated youth policy from USAID. It has been the work of a lot of people, and we know that it's critical. And particularly, I remember really fondly the launch of the Young Africa Leaders Program and the tremendous work that we were all able to accomplish together with the launch of YALI almost a decade ago. One of the most significant impacts of the program has been these multiplier results that we see from returning alumni like yourself, who not only return to their communities, but sort of have this multiplier effect on the entire world. You share your experiences, you live values of community service, civic engagement, leadership, and you basically created and made what we had started as sort of a leadership program into an entire movement. The YALI Leadership Centers have trained more than 20,000 young leaders across sub-Saharan Africa. And we know that what's really important is that these leaders have represented a diversity of linguistic, cultural, socioeconomic backgrounds. We also know that the regional leadership centers are a model for promoting inclusion and supporting vulnerable groups, including people in rural areas, women, members of the LGBTQIA community, just a really sheer multitude of people from around the continent. And looking back over a decade, right, I'm really proud of the advancements that we've been able to see that USAID has both continued to make on youth development, not just with YALI in this program, which was really, I think, foundational and had impacts on programs across the board, but also across the world. The launch of this policy really shows that USAID is serious about partnering with youth on issues that matter most to them. This means supporting positive change makers in their communities. It means prioritizing their issues, not just making sure that we are pushing our own agenda. This isn't just a moral priority. You know, where I sit now here at the National Security Council, we recognize how important engaging young people across the globe is. It adds value to us here at home in the United States, and it adds value to our national security interests. We realize that the globe is going through a generational change right now, and young people are at the center of this. The young people of Generation 2030 have to have the skills, and they already have the determination and the innovation to lead us right now. We know that the most pressing solutions of our time will be unlocked in this generation that's rising, whether it's to the COVID-19 pandemic, the rise of authoritarianism, the sort of complex crises that are proliferating, or when we're thinking about how to solve the climate crisis. We need more empathy in this interconnected world. We need more solutions that are creative and that think out of the box and don't just accept that change isn't possible. So with that, I'd like to invite Imrana Buba, who is also a YALI alum. Again, there are a few of us here, to join us to look at this from the youth perspective specifically, and to describe what she's been doing. Thank you.
Thank you, Linda. It is an honor to get to meet you and welcome everyone here today, whether it is morning, afternoon, or evening, wherever you are. As a former Yali leader, both as a Yali RLC and Mandela Washington Fellow, and current advisor on the Youth Excel Global Youth Advisory Council, I have had the opportunity to participate in and guide the decision-making of some of USAID flagship youth programs. I have seen the work of USAID to meaningfully engage young people has been gaining momentum over the years, and the launch of this policy today marks a new momentum. We are happy to have each of you here to celebrate with us as we announce new partnerships, hear from young leaders about the war in Ukraine, engage in intergenerational dialogues with political power holders, and even share new funding opportunities for youth. It is going to be an exciting event, and I know we are all looking forward to it. Back to you, Gail. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Linda and Imrana, for sharing insights on youth leadership through the YALI program. Now, to continue our program, I am very pleased to welcome USAID Administrator Samantha Power. For those of you who do not know, Administrator Power began her career as a war correspondent in Bosnia and went on to report from places including Kosovo, Rwanda, Sudan, and Zimbabwe. She's an author and editor of multiple books and the recipient of the 2003 Pulitzer Prize for Nonfiction. From 2013 to 2017, Power served in the Obama-Biden administration as the 28th U.S. Permanent Representative of the United Nations. Today, Administrator Power will highlight the ways in which USAID is prioritizing its commitment to inclusive youth development through youth engagement on issues like climate, COVID-19, democracy, and anti-corruption. She will lead us in a discussion with the USAID Ukraine Unity team and share some important announcements from USAID. Administrator Power, welcome. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Gael, for that kind introduction. Thanks to Imrana, and thanks, of course, to Linda. It's great to take a walk back down memory lane about the founding of YALI and really to contemplate how the seeds that we plant today can grow and, to mix metaphors, have these ripple effects everywhere I go around the world. I meet people who are part of either YALI or the sisters and brothers of YALI in other regions of the world. It has been a truly impactful program. And Linda, thanks for your leadership back in the day in getting it done. What looks effortless in retrospect takes a ton of work and vision. And that's what President Obama and Linda and others who worked on launching that brought to this. I also want to thank Deputy Administrator Coleman and USAID Assistant Administrator Michelle Samilis, who have both been champions of updating USAID's youth policy and bringing it into the present from the minute they stepped into USAID last year. I also want to recognize the tireless work of the agency Youth Corps, including the drafting team and the more than 50 USAID staff members and 300 external reviewers who contributed to our new youth policy. And of course, welcome to our ally and consistent supporter, Representative Grace Meng, who has fought to expand opportunities here in the US for young people around the world through the proposed Youth, Peace, and Security Act. I will say that this is Representative Meng's second USAID event in just 2 days, and we could not be more grateful, Congresswoman Meng, to have you in our corner. On October 23rd, 1984, a long time ago, NBC Nightly News aired a special report from Ethiopia produced by BBC journalist Michael Burke and shot by Kenyan cameraman Mohammed Amin. Sharply written and vividly produced, the report described a biblical famine taking place in Ethiopia. And along with the haunting writing came even more haunting images of children from babies to teenagers, reedy legs, sunken eyes, skin pulled taut over their ribs, images that horrified American viewers, images that we now associate with famine. Those images sparked a watershed moment in journalism, but not only in journalism, in development too. Suddenly, global relief agencies found their mailboxes flooded, their answering machines, remember answering machines, overflowing. Celebrities spoke and sang out at the famous 1985 Live Aid concert at Wembley Stadium. And over the next 3 decades, Americans became even more generous, sending support to Sudan, Somalia, and everywhere in between. The Ethiopia report was perhaps one of the most prominent examples of an idea so prevalent in the way our work is discussed, that young people, those kids, those teenagers, are helpless, that they are victims, that they have no power to help themselves or those around them. And while it is indeed true that young people often unfairly bear the consequences of mistakes made generations before, while it is indeed true that young people around the world face unthinkable suffering, for example, today in places like Ukraine, Yemen, Ethiopia, to portray them as helpless is not just untrue, factually, it is offensive. The truth is that young people have always been active participants in their own destinies, and those of the people around them. From world wars to civil rights movements to grassroots revolutions around the world, young people have won decisive battles. Young people have expanded the reach of justice. Young people have shaken the halls of power. Young people have brought down dictators and driven some of history's most tectonic shifts. Today's young people, those under the age of 30, make up over half of the world's population. They have lived through a pandemic, led and witnessed popular uprisings, and harnessed the power of social media to drive landmark changes in domestic and international policy. In their families, their communities, and their governments, they lead, whether or not we call them capital L leaders. I mean young people like Gael, a member of our very own Young African Leadership Initiative. Alongside Peace Corps volunteers, Gael helped organize a leadership campaign for teenage girls in her community in Madagascar, a camp that helped young girls learn life skills and gave them access to role models. Today, she works with a USAID-funded project to help young people from over 190 countries collaborate on meeting priorities in the Sustainable Development Goals. I mean young people like Ineza Grace from Rwanda, whom I met during last year's International Youth Day. Ineza created the Green Fighter organization, which has brought together more than 3,500 young people in her community to protect the environment. And she founded a global letter writing campaign to address climate change, a campaign that has more than 250 members across over 45 countries. And of course, I mean young people like Taras, who I'm really looking forward to speaking with in just a few minutes. Before the war in Ukraine, Taras created an online platform that links young people in her country to training, skill building, resources, and career counseling. After Putin launched his horrific attack, Taras pivoted the platform to provide psychological support for young people, an online support system that now reaches 52,000 young people every week. Taras is just one example of young Ukrainian leaders who are stepping up to help their communities, even as their cities are shelled, their homes are destroyed, and their friends and family enlist. 24-year-old Valeria used her experience working with children to start a daycare in her new town, a daycare for families who, like her, were internally displaced by the war. And Timur, who's just 20, and used social media to coordinate anti-Russian rallies in his home city of Slavutic and created an opportunity for his mayor to negotiate a deal to protect his fellow residents. I'm pleased to say that USAID has long recognized the power and potential of young leaders. Our previous youth policy, launched a decade ago in 2012, made great strides to integrate young leaders into our work and emphasize projects that were both youth relevant and youth focused. And over the last year, we invested $270 million in new projects that support young people around the world, which you will learn more about later today. But it is safe to say we didn't go far enough. Our previous policy, though strong in some ways, still somewhat fell into the same trap of seeing young people solely as beneficiaries of foreign aid, rather than the key to rendering that aid obsolete. That is the ultimate objective. Today, I'm proud to launch a new youth policy that sheds the old mindset. The updated policy calls for programming that isn't just youth relevant and youth focused, but is also youth led. It views young people not as a monolith, but as a collection of individuals, and emphasizes the inclusion and support of young people often excluded due to their identities, LGBTQIA+ individuals, Indigenous people, persons with disabilities, women and girls, or racial, ethnic, and religious minorities. It also elevates the role of our agency's youth advisors to push us to partner with youth throughout all the work which USAID does. And over the next decade, it seeks to drastically expand investment in young leaders and youth-led programming. In that spirit, I am proud to announce USAID's first global small grant competition for youth-led organizations around the world. The competition will award $10,000 to up to 8 youth-led organizations piloting change, innovation, and research in their communities. It's an opportunity designed specifically for those grassroots organizations who are often shut out of meetings with high-level donors and agencies like USAID. And it's inspired by locally led and youth-led initiatives like the one Taras coordinates, initiatives that are critical to bringing people together to advance development goals. Young people's contributions and leadership are critical to every major challenge we face today. From the global pandemic we are still living with, to climate change whose shocks to our systems, to our landscapes, to our communities are intensifying every day, to conflict around the world, which is not receding. It is time to view young people as the leaders that we know them to be. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Administrator Power, for setting the stage with those powerful opening remarks. My name is Nadia Shah, and I am the team lead for the Countering Russian Aggression portfolio within USAID Ukraine's Office of Democracy and Governance and the AOR for the Missions Youth Program. I have over 11 years of experience managing and designing stabilization, democracy and governance, and countering violent extremism programs, many with a youth focus. Our youth program, Ukraine National Identity Through Youth, more commonly known by its acronym UNITY, is a 5-year activity that supports youth leadership towards a values-based Ukrainian identity through 4 complementary objectives: economic empowerment, civic engagement, support for pluralism and diversity, and research. UNITY launched in 2020, and since then we've conducted a labor market assessment and research on the future of work, looking at current employment opportunities and emerging industries. We included youth, businesses, and policymakers in conversations about how best to equip youth to enter these emerging markets. We trained youth on how to engage their local communities and decision makers through initiatives such as the Week of Civic Activism in Schools, where students selected topics they were passionate about and developed community-based initiatives to help address issues, of many of which were focused on the environment. To foster respect for pluralism and diversity, we introduced youth talks, where we paired up individuals based on their difference of opinions on selected topics and gave them a safe space to discuss and engage in a healthy discourse. We also conducted a national youth poll, and we were prepared to launch the 2nd annual National Youth Poll in March, but as of February 24th, many of our plans had to change. As a result of Russia's recent invasion of Ukraine, we had to modify our plans because the needs of Ukrainian youth, at least in the short term, have changed. However, we continue to invest in youth who are emerging as true leaders in the midst of a war. We continue to support youth volunteerism efforts at the grassroots as well as through a nationwide platform called Spivdia, where people in need are connected with potential service providers. Instead of fully rehabilitating youth centers as we had planned, we are equipping youth centers to be IDP transit centers, or safe spaces for youth and children, and have increased our focus on providing psychosocial support. As we look to the future, we are also exploring ways to ensure youth are a part of rebuilding Ukraine. I am joined here today by some very special guests from the Unity team who are currently still in Ukraine and are actively working to pivot programming and support youth in this time of need. Please welcome Taras Derkach and Yusia Tkachuk. Taras is a young Ukrainian leader who contributes to positive transformation in Ukraine by supporting other young people through innovative programming. Taras coordinates a career hub platform for youth that links young people to skill building and career counseling resources and training. Yulia, who prefers to go by Yusia, is the deputy chief of party for Unity, implemented by IREX. Yusia oversees a technical team of IREX and partner organizations that implement the Unity program. With 13 years of experience managing civic engagement, she liaises with Ukrainian government institutions such as the Ministry of Youth and Sport, the Ministry of Economy, and the Ministry of Education to ensure that new practices and solutions introduced by the program translate into policies and get disseminated across the country. Welcome, Taras and Yusia, and thanks for joining us today. Let's get started with our conversation. My first question is for you, Taras. How are young people mobilizing and responding to the challenges they are facing right now?
Hi, everyone. First of all, thank you for inviting me. It's a pleasure to be a part of this great event. First of all, before the war, my organization, CSR Ukraine, and I successfully implemented different programs for young people on career development, on skills development, and we created Career Hub platform. We did a research on future of work within Unity program and engaged young people, businesses, educational institutions, and governments to shape this future, to shape this rewarding future careers for Ukrainian youth. But one morning changed a lot for us, for me, for my family, for my team, and I think for every young person in Ukraine. So the key challenge right now, I think it's unquestionably the physical security. I, like any other young people, got to understand what our grandmothers used to wish in us on our birthdays. The wish was for peaceful sky. And we didn't think about it every day. But now we hear alarms every day, and more than 5 million people went abroad to save their lives, and 6 million relocated to safer areas within Ukraine. And my wife is one of them. She also helped her parents to flee the danger zone from Kiev, and she went abroad, and now she's in Europe. So the war also brings some challenges connected with mental health, with stress, and I felt this myself. My teams felt this, and as well as thousands of young people that we serve through our Career Hub platform. And over 50% of people lost their jobs. So this also adds some feelings of uncertainty and some stress. That is why our team mobilized to launch some psychological support services for young people, and using our previous experience and our youth consultants that we trained before. And we run an online marathon. It's some kind of informational campaign in social media that where we share different tips, useful resources, videos, and create some kind of support system for young people, that so they feel they're not alone, and so we are in this together. And also we run online moderated peer support group to support directly. And so yeah, this marathon reaches 50,000 people every week, and we think it really helps young people. Another challenge I'd like to mention is the need to adapt quickly and learn new things within these circumstances. In my first days after war, I like more other young people, took responsibility for my parents, for other people. We taped windows in our houses, we prepared bomb shelters, we organized security measures. I've never done anything like this before, but the ability to learn and adaptability within these situations, we actually, within our future of work study, we see that this adaptability and learning skill is a key. And these challenging times proved that this is true. In my work, I also had to adapt, and in addition to my coordinational work, I had to record voiceovers. I did some video infographics and some volunteering work, sort out humanitarian aid, operate a warehouse, or even evacuate people. Like any other people, we recalled our experience, from that time of Revolution of Dignity. At the time I was a student, and I saw everyone showing their solidarity, mutual assistance, and willingness to help. And right now, from the first days, youth centers became humanitarian aid headquarters, shelters. Thousands of young people started volunteering in different front lines, of course in military and of course in civic. For example, my colleague Maria, she volunteers in informational troops. So she's sending different anti-propaganda things, or volunteering and messaging, answering different questions every night. Another colleague, Nastya, she's facilitating a psychological support group for IDPs. So we build on our strengths, on our dedication. We want to create a better future for Ukraine, and this spirit of like-minded people and the skills that we learned, this is something that is help us to manage this situation, and we hope that this will support our future victory. Thank you.
Thanks for that response, Taras, and thanks for everything you're doing for the Ukrainian people. Administrator Power, thinking of everything Taras just shared, and you yourself have seen many atrocities throughout your career as a journalist and at the United Nations. What are some of the things that stand out to you about the role of young people during times of crisis?
Well, first I would say thanks to Taras for everything he's doing. It's an honor to meet you and to hear how you're just pivoting, shifting in the ways that you've described. And I think that's maybe one answer, is that this ability to adapt. When you're younger, you're just not wedded to an old way of doing things. You may have just started doing something in one direction, and so when a crisis hits, your ability to pivot and repurpose and kind of think, not in terms of, well, we always do that or we never do that, but rather like to think afresh about what conditions in the moment demand. I'm really struck, this didn't come up so much in Taras's answer, but about Ukraine right now and the way that young people are using social media. A huge part of a conflict, any conflict, is strategic communications, is perceptions of momentum, and the ways in which young people who are so fluid in not only sort of having Twitter accounts or operating on Facebook or Telegram or wherever they're operating, but having a kind of irreverence that is very, very rare, I think, for people in the older generations like mine. And so that ability to kind of find the choice image, and then amplify that and get more young people engaged and kind of inspiring a culture of confidence, which Taras would know better than me, but I don't think, on day one, when suddenly Russian missiles are raining down on population centers and on hospitals and theaters, it's hard to have that kind of sense, that power of belief, that idealism in the face of Russian steel. But I think young people are a huge part of mustering that, and it's part because of this tech savvy and having an eye to, you know, what a powerful image is, and an eye to, you know, how to also crowdsource what was actually happening on the ground, in order to get information to people who needed it, to know when to flee, how to flee, where to go. But also, I think even on the military side, that tech savvy has been brought into the Ukrainian approach to defending itself. And I think you're seeing the results of that, the positive results of that on the battlefield, as challenging as, of course, as the conflict remains, and as devastating as it remains. So that's just like one real-time example of what we're seeing in Ukraine. Maybe the other example I'd give that's a contemporary example is, and in a way it sort of gets at the theme of my speech, of sort of how we see young people as beneficiaries of our program, and there's a kind of paternalism to it all. But if you look at what's happening in Afghanistan right now, yes, donors like us are pushing really hard on the Taliban to allow girls to return to school. But who is pushing the hardest? The girls themselves in the communities. You know, not waiting for some conference and some quid pro quo and some, you know, shift in Taliban ideology, but just knowing what it was to experience an education, and now knowing what it's like to have that taken away, and the bravery of these girls, but the leadership of the women and girls and the mothers in these communities in just pushing, so that, I mean, we don't know where this is going to end and how successful we're going to be, but to the degree that girls are in school, even at the primary level, it is because of that bottom-up pressure from young people, and again, them insisting with their mothers and their fathers that every citizen, you know, be part of raising their voice, notwithstanding the risks and the dangers of doing so. So I think that's a powerful example of the fruits of an education where girls assert that agency, the importance of education, which is a huge part of what young people advocate for globally, but also to see young people as change agents in their own right, and not simply waiting to hear, you know, what the outcome of all this pressure on the Taliban is.
Thank you so much for that, Administrator Power. My next question is for you, Yusia. How has youth participation supported the work you're doing within Unity?
Nadia, thank you very much for that question. A short answer is that youth is in the driver's seat for Unity. They contributed to the design of the program. They chose the Ukrainian name for the program, Mrіємо та діємо, which means dreaming and acting. They serve on the Youth Advisory Council for the program, where they vet our ideas, they propose their own ideas that advise us on important issues and relevant trends. We equip them with skills, resources, and create an enabling environment, but they bring tons of energy and initiative to the program, and not only to the program, but to the country as a whole. In fact, many effective solutions that help thousands of Ukrainians affected by war today are initiated by youth. And one of the examples is this online Spivdia platform that you, Nadia, mentioned. It was spearheaded from idea to execution by a grassroots youth initiative just over one weekend. 3 young IT specialists programmed the system, 8 more mobilized volunteers, resources, and several ministries to set up supply chains and distribution lines of humanitarian aid. The response system they created was so efficient that the government of Ukraine handed over a civilian helpline to the Spivdia team. And when I see this initiative and many other similar initiatives that are taking place in Ukraine right now, it clearly demonstrates that young people have absorbed the core Unity competences of entrepreneurial thinking, adaptability, emotional intelligence, and lifelong learning. They set an example, and they are the ones who push local and national governments to unite different actors and to accept youth participation. And at this historic moment for Ukraine, these are not simply projects. In fact, young people, through their actions, shape a new version of Ukrainian identity. the identity that is deeply grounded in a sense of civic duty and personal responsibility for the future of this country. Their participation is evidence of resilience and adherence to democratic values. And in Unity, we meet them where they are and create even more room for participation and youth leadership. And I hope that these young people who are now acting and setting example for everyone else will introduce this new model so that every Ukrainian citizen will follow the example, and it would be embarrassing not to be as socially and civically active as young people are today.
Thanks so much, Yusia. Administrator Power, you've heard about the work that Unity is doing, and we're grateful that you are so steeped in what Unity is doing, that we could share it with the rest of the agency and youth advocates around the world. Are there lessons that can be applied to USAID programmings overall based on what you've heard today?
Yeah, I mean, first, hats off to Unity and everything that they are doing. And I love the point that was just made about, in a way, social norms, about how young people are redefining citizenship and what it entails. Of course, a war accelerates that as well, but it is young people at the fore who are enlisting, people of older generations. Is extremely powerful. I guess I would just, I'm more interested in hearing from the Ukrainians on these questions myself, because we have so much to learn from them and their cutting edge work. But I think what we are trying to do differently is move away from, again, the traditions of, having senior people, for example, who by definition, because they've gone through the ranks, are likely to be older, but sitting around tables and designing programs that involve youth. And so, it's one thing, again, to envisage youth as leaders, but it's another thing to just change the habits of organizations like mine with experienced, and very dedicated leadership to youth programming, but to move away from thinking that just because we're dedicated to it doesn't mean we actually know what we're talking about, because we're not young. And so in the design of these programs, we have to have the young people, sitting with us side by side and, having that participation built in as we design what it is that we intend a program to achieve, what the metrics are, how we evaluate success. So I know it kind of should go without saying, but it really is about having youth voices central to our policies and our programming and our insights about what we're doing in a country as a whole. So again, it's about integration, even in programs that are branded being about women's empowerment. Well, young people should be part of those conversations as well, not just in conversations about, a new education scheme or an after-school program, or introducing teenagers to voluntary family planning. I mean, all, things that involve youth, yes, but youth are everywhere. Our climate programming has to go out of its way to be designed with young people at the table. And so one of the practical ways we are trying to, again, structure ourselves to do better at this is by setting up youth advisory councils, like you mentioned before. And I think this is a more practical way to ensure that voice isn't just siloed, in self-anointed or officially declared youth programming, but that those youth voices are present as we shape programming that will affect all citizens. Thank you.
Thanks so much for that. And I know you want to hear more from our Ukrainian colleagues, so I'm going to ask Taras one more question. What's next for youth in Ukraine? How would you build on what you have learned from this experience?
I mean, it sounds, I think, I feel that my generation is youth generation is a generation of war. The war showed both our strengths, weaknesses, but main thing right now is to draw right conclusions and lessons. And a lot has changed for us, but we're already trying to work on some new vision. We want to revise our future of work research. We want to ask young people and experts. We already are doing this. And many young people, we understand that many young people will need to start from scratch, retrain, change their career path, and we understand if it's necessary to build, it will be necessary to rebuild our country and restart the economy. And it's not going to be easy, but I think we are ready to participate, and young people are ready to participate and to be along a side of creating of these great programs. The fact that we already understand that young people will be much more active in political life of Ukraine, of the world, I think, and in decision making in our communities, we already are, and we will no longer tolerate any forms of corruption, or we will not trust the authorities without responsibility. You know, we are going to rely on our own efforts and on our responsibility for our communities. And the approach to education, I think, will change too. Young people will pay more attention to practical courses, to vocational specialities, not only to higher education. And prestige will give way to practicality. Self-employment will not be something scary. And monetization of hobbies or remote works or freelance, I think, also will rise. And the popularity of exchange programs and learning foreign languages, for example, will also grow. At the same time, what I see right now, it's Ukrainization. You know, we go in far more into our Ukrainian culture. We go in more to Western and our Ukrainian content in social media. And the conclusion, maybe the most important thing that we learned from this war, that we need to value key simple things like loved ones, like freedom, like life. And these values we reconfirmed and choose to fight for a democratic way of life. And I think we will continue this way. So just want to thank you and thank you for supporting. I see those comments, and thank you for supporting Ukraine. And I hope that we will win and we will change the world for better. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Taras and UCF, for joining us and for that insight. Administrator Power, thank you so much for taking the time to dive a little bit deeper into what the Unity activity is doing in Ukraine and for supporting the Ukraine mission the way you have been. It's been great to have such leadership on our side. Taras and UCF, stay safe, and I will pass it back over to Gael.
Thank you so much, Nadia, for leading us in this interesting conversation with the USAID Ukraine Unity team and Administrator Power. Now, I am delighted to introduce Congressional Representative Grace Meng from Queens, New York. Representative Meng is a member of the House Appropriation Committee, which is responsible for funding every federal agency, program, and project within the United States government. She is a youth champion. Alongside Representative Phillips, Curtis, and Fitzpatrick, she reintroduced the Youth, Peace, and Security Act, which is the first comprehensive national legislation that would prioritize the inclusion of youth in conflict resolution. Representative Meng, thank you so much for being with us today to celebrate our support for and partnership with youth.
Thank you so much. I think I'll begin speaking, but thank you for the kind introduction. And to Administrator Power, thank you for your amazing leadership, and again for your whole team and the amazing work that you do on behalf of our country. every single day. My name is Congresswoman Grace Meng, and I'm proud to represent parts of Queens in New York. It's an honor to be here today with my colleague, Congressman Dean Phillips, to mark the launch of USAID's Youth in Development Policy 2022 update. It's so exciting. As was mentioned, I've worked with some of my colleagues, Congress members Curtis, Phillips, and Fitzpatrick to introduce the Youth, Peace, and Security Act. Young people, as you know, continue to bear the burdens of peace and conflict. They are the generation most impacted by elites' decisions, and yet they aren't given the opportunity to participate in designing their own future. That's particularly true in regions facing protracted conflict. I've met so many brave young men and women who are committed to making the hard choices and compromises necessary to end conflict, and who are coming up with innovative solutions that could break through entrenched interests. But too often, the only investments their governments make in them is violence prevention. And when I started to think about how to integrate the voices of young people into US foreign policy, the Youth, Peace, and Security agenda felt like the best place to start. The primary goal was to give young leaders a say in their own future. And this bill seeks to ensure that the US promotes the inclusive and meaningful participation of youth in mediation and negotiation processes that prevent, mitigate, or resolve conflict overseas. Our YPS Act would establish a youth coordinator at USAID, as well as a youth point of contact in relevant bureaus, integrate youth consultation into program design, and provide financial and technical assistance to youth-led initiatives in pursuit of conflict resolution and peace building. The YPS Act is a once-in-a-generation shift in US foreign policy that would bring youth voices to the table in conflicts all around the world. And in countries facing conflict, it will be young people who will bear the burden of sustaining peace over generations, leading their society from reconciliation to prosperity. I'm looking forward to today's discussion, and I want to thank the youth leaders from literally all around the world for joining us today.
I would like now to invite Representative Dean Phillips to the stage. Representative Phillips is a representative from Minnesota's 3rd Congressional District. He's focused on restoring Americans' faith in their government by inspiring a new era of collaboration in Washington, and is vice chair of the Bipartisan Problem Solvers Caucus, and is a member of the House Ethics, Small Business, and Foreign Affairs Committees. Welcome, Representative Phillips.
Thank you, Gael, and greetings, everybody, to Administrator Power, everybody at USAID, partner organizations that help develop this wonderful new initiative, and most importantly, greetings to all the young people, whether it's good morning or good evening to all of you. I am grateful for all of you who inspired this wonderful initiative. I want to say that we believe in your generation. You give us hope, you inspire us, you can change the world, and you are changing the world. And I speak for all of the old people on this call when I say that we are just as excited as we are grateful to all of you. I have my own youth advisory council comprised of high school students from the district I represent in Minnesota. And I'll tell you all, I rely on them heavily for perspective, opinion, and innovation as it relates to policy, not just as it relates to youth, but more broadly. And whether it's the Youth, Peace, and Security Act or the Girls Lead Act, so much of their work and perspective has gone into the policies I support, including this one. So I just want to say good evening, good morning, heartfelt gratitude to all of you, and looking forward to your questions and our conversation. And with that, I'll turn it back to you, Gail.
Thank you so much. We've been joined by three esteemed young leaders to have a conversation with Representative Meng and Phillips about youth leadership and activism. I'll first give the mic to Imrana from Nigeria, who we heard from earlier, and who is a member of USAID's Youth Excel Advisory Group and the founder of the Youth Coalition Against Terrorism, which is a volunteer-based youth organization that aims to unite young people against violent extremism in northern Nigeria.
Thank you again, Gail. My question is for Representative Meng. How is Congress working to advance international youth engagement in peace and security? What are your concerns in this space?
Thank you so much for the question. And first, I want to recognize what I've learned about your work to unite young people against violent extremism in northern Nigeria. It's precisely efforts like yours that my bill, the Youth Peace and Security Act, seeks to support. I think that in many ways, US foreign policy and development programs have benefited young people by failing to explicitly reference the unique challenges youth peace builders face. And we're doing our youth a disservice. And that's why our bill directs the youth coordinator at USAID to establish a Youth Peace and Security Fund that will provide grants, emergency assistance, technical assistance to eligible youth-led civil society groups and young adult peace-building implementers, as well as emergency assistance for those who need immediate support in the face of legal and safety concerns due to their participation in peace-building activities. I first started to do this in my role as the vice chair of our House Appropriations Subcommittee on State and Foreign Operations. And that's the panel in the House of Representatives that's responsible for funding US foreign assistance. And in this year's government spending bill, I secured funds to support youth civil society organizations and youth peacebuilding implementers, and secured language in the bill urging the State Department to coordinate with all government agencies who are managing foreign assistance to actually develop a strategy that directly addresses youth needs and engagement. Nevertheless, it is critical that we work to pass legislation like our Youth Peace and Security Act to codify, to put into law our actual youth engagement policies.
Next up is Ananya from India, a member of our USAID Youth Digital Leadership Council and founder of a digital defense lab for young children, especially girls, to explore and harness the opportunities in the digital economy.
Thank you so much, Gail, for that introduction. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. And I would like to take this opportunity to ask a question to you, Representative Phillips. So in a lot of developing countries, there are many people who are not overly or in fact not even connected to digital devices, but that does not actually rule out the chances of them becoming potential targets of mischief online. So how is the US Congress working to understand digital harms and problematic online behavior like cyberbullying, mis or disinformation, and so on in this context? And is there any legislation which addresses issues of this kind and tries to protect children and the youth from digital harms?
Well, thank you, Ananya, for the important question. And to answer directly, yes, we're working on it, but not nearly hard enough. There are some propositions, I don't think any that will effectively address the issue. And let me start by turning the invitation back to all of you young people on this call. We need your perspectives on this. You know, misinformation, disinformation, it affects every one of us every day, whether you're connected digitally or not. The likelihood is over the next number of years, more and more people will be, and it will affect all of us. Now, I believe, like all of you, I believe deeply in free speech, but I do not believe in deceit and lies. which are so much easier to spread with the touch of a button. We all know that. What's the answer, Ananya? I would argue education and critical thinking. The more that we, the United States, through USAID and other programs, can invest, encourage, support the education of young people around the world, I think the better off we'll be. And that goes for the United States as well. I came to Congress on a mission to restore trust and faith in government. It's harder to do in an environment like the one we face today, but it's a reminder to all of us too that we have to be intentional about breaking bread with, listening to the life stories, and finding common ground with people who we otherwise wouldn't. That is a responsibility of being human. There are some things we cannot legislate, love and compassion and decency and respect. We have to encourage it through education and supporting young people, which is why I'm thrilled about this initiative we're talking about today.
Finally, I'd like to introduce Karen from Colombia, who is a young woman entrepreneur and runs the Biz Nation, an online education platform that teaches marketable skills and business education, and is a USAID youth-led subawardee under Youth Excel.
Hi, everyone. Hope you're doing great. My name is Karen, all the way from Colombia. That's a great question. I have another question related to young women and how it's really hard to advance skills, expand role beyond home, especially in Latin America, where we have most of these gender roles that are very traditional and that are very much set in their mindsets, are very difficult to overcome, especially in these topics such as digital skills that would give them financial empowerment. How can the government help foster economic opportunities for women in the USA and abroad?
Thank you for the important question. I'll go ahead. One of the cornerstones of my work in Congress has been about diversity and inclusion here in America and abroad. This is so important. And we know that including more voices at the table, whether it's peace negotiations or business negotiations or on corporate boards, ultimately fosters more sustainable final treaties. And this must be the common denominator for our foreign policy. The more people, the better. The more voices, the better. The more experiences, the better off we all are. In my role on our subcommittee, I've been able to support several initiatives to foster economic opportunities for women. For example, we secured $200 million for the Gender Equity and Equality Action Fund. This helps to advance economic security for women and girls globally. I secured $50 million to increase leadership opportunities for women in countries where women and girls suffer discrimination due to the law, policy, or practice. By strengthening protections for women's political status. It helps expand women's participation in their political parties and elections, and increasing women's opportunities for leadership positions in both the public and private sectors. I also championed the inclusion of $175 million to implement a multi-year strategy to prevent and respond to gender-based violence in countries where it is still common. But without addressing some of these root causes of gender-based violence, women will continue to be left out of the workforce.
Thank you so much, Rep. Magda.
What a powerful and interesting conversation. We thank Representative Meng and Phillips for being with us today. And a special thank you to our youth leaders who joined from around the world to share their expertise with all of us. We look forward to seeing more of the positive outcomes from your local work locally and globally. Next up, I'd like to introduce the Deputy Assistant Administrator for the Gender Equality and Women's Empowerment Hub and the Inclusive Development Hub in USAID's Bureau for Development, Democracy and Innovation, Ms. Bama Athoria. Ms. Athoria is an expert on international labor issues, gender and social inclusion, and business and human rights. She was an Economic Inequality Fellow at Open Society Foundations and Senior Advisor on Gender Equity and Inclusion to Loudest Foundation. She has also previously served as a USAID's Senior Specialist for Labor, where she developed new programming to address labor rights, counter human trafficking, and promote women's economic inclusion. Welcome, Bama Athoria.
Gael, thank you so much. And thanks for your fabulous moderation today. I think we're all very lucky to have you with us today. I want to really appreciate Representative Meng and Representative Phillips for participating in this event and for the leadership that we so sorely need on these issues. Of course, to Linda Etim and to Administrator Power for their powerful leadership, and to the young leaders from Unity and those that we've just heard. So great to be with all of you today. And I also want to give a special thanks to the leadership of our agency's Inclusive Development Hub and our youth team in particular, and to all of the youth champions throughout USAID that have made this new policy come to life. Policies are important. They represent USAID's values and give us a guiding path for how to develop programs. But the real achievement is in the actual programs, with youth activities taking place in over 80 missions and operating units around the world. To highlight the amazing work happening at the country level, we will share with you a new visual storyboard of just a few of the new USAID activities that are youth-focused and that are happening across different sectors and regions. These 11 programs alone represent over $270 million of USAID funding for youth. I'm proud to see a gender equity and inclusive development approach in all these programs, elevating young people from marginalized communities to the forefront of USAID's youth programming. After all, who is development for if we don't ensure that it serves those who have the greatest interest in a better future? And just to echo, I really was struck by Linda Etim's comments earlier this morning that these programs are not just elevating these particular youth, but connecting, I hope, connecting. And as we see young people connect across different backgrounds, right? Different perspectives, different experiences, you all are building a very powerful set of connections. And I doubt that anyone in the world can divide you once you've done that. So these big investments that we are making, we hope are elevating youth voices today to be the future leaders for the next generation. I truly hope that you, our future leaders, are watching these stories with us and ready to engage with us and tell us what more we can do. Thank you. Back to you, Gael.
Wow, what an amazing journey around the world, acknowledging just a fraction of USAID's youth programming in celebrating this renewed commitment to youth through this revised policy launch. I would now like to turn to some of our USAID's partners as they share their renewed commitment to partner with USAID. We will start off with UNICEF's Executive Director, Catherine Russell, and then hear from colleagues from Restless Development, Jen Yu, and One Young World.
UNICEF and USAID share a vision, a world where every child can reach their full potential, and where young people everywhere have the education, the skills, and the experience they need to make a difference in their lives and in their communities. USAID's Youth Development Policy, launched in 2012, has helped drive change for millions of children and young people. Today, USAID is renewing its commitment to work for and with youth to help them thrive. And USAID and UNICEF are renewing our partnership to support young social innovators and changemakers. Going forward, we will partner on new initiatives like Upshift to build the next generation of innovators and entrepreneurs. We will work together to leverage powerful youth platforms like YouReport, which I just joined when I was in the DRC, and which boasts 21.5 million U reporters in 90 countries who engage on issues that matter to them and hold leaders accountable for change. And we will deepen our efforts together to ensure access to education for children caught up in humanitarian crises. Young people must be at the center of all our social development efforts. To the young people listening today, your voices and solutions are critical. Whether on issues of climate, learning, or social justice, you are dreaming and you are doing, advocating and innovating for change. I encourage you to sign up to become a U reporter. Wherever you are, please continue to be a force for social good. In turn, we pledge to support you in all our work and through our renewed partnership with USAID. Together, we will help create sustainable change for everyone.
Restless Development has partnered with USAID for more than a decade. We've worked to demonstrate the importance and unleash the agency and power of young people and youth civil society. We've provided trainings and resources on meaningful youth engagement, co-chaired the community of practice on this topic, and are supporting youth insights on youth power 2, learning and evidence. Restless Development is a non-profit global agency that supports the collective power of young leaders to create a better world. Every year, we train, mentor, and connect thousands of young people to use their youth power and lead change. We have a 35-year track record of delivering programs with impact and support tens of thousands of young leaders. We work with them on the issues that they care about the most. We're glad to see USAID reaffirm its commitment to youth leadership, along with new ambitions to work with local partners, including youth-led organizations. We invite you to explore our new power shifting checklist, actionable guidelines to intentionally shift power to ensure all young people have the power to lead change in their communities and the world. Restless Development also convenes a growing youth collective, a powerful network of nearly 4,000 youth civil society organizations and groups from 185 countries. It provides an important platform for members to connect, learn, and share. We invite you to find out more and collaborate with members who are leading change in communities across the world via our online platform. To the young people looking to build and share your power, if you run an organization or group, sign up to receive networking opportunities, resources, and programmatic support. We've also just launched 10 Youth Power Principles that recognize and celebrate young people's complexity, diversity, and uniqueness. Join us in sharing what makes your youth power unique.
Investing in young people is vital to improving the well-being of communities globally. At Generation Unlimited, we believe that young people are experts in their own lives, and they have the ideas and the energy to create a better world for themselves and others. Through funding from USAID, Generation Unlimited launched the Imagine Ventures Youth Challenge, a flagship social entrepreneurship and youth engagement initiative tackling skill building, workforce development, and social impact, while inspiring over 15 million young people globally. With presence in over 45 countries and involving over 250 local organizations, our global initiative works with young people to reach their full potential by fostering increased civic engagement, improved education, and employment opportunities, entrepreneurial skills, and the confidence and resilience to bring their ideas to life. Together with USAID, we strive to empower young people by generating youth-led and gender-transformative, inclusive solutions that will support young people today and in future generations. We applaud USAID's renewed commitment to youth development, to young people all over the world on the issues that matter to them in their communities. Generation Unlimited looks forward to continuing its efforts with USAID in inspiring young innovators to design the solutions to the world's greatest challenges. To those of you young people looking to get involved on issues of civic engagement, employment, and education, be sure to check out Imagine Ventures Youth Challenge. It's never too late to use your ideas to create innovative solutions to the world's greatest problems.
You are the most educated, well-informed, and connected generation in human history, and you have the opportunity to drive meaningful change. That's why it's essential for public, private, and third sectors to support youth, unlocking your full potential, putting your talents to use, and guaranteeing that we effectively engage in addressing your needs, ensuring you become the leaders the world so desperately needs. Every year, I'm struck by the passion and commitment of young people, proving that they understand and care more than ever before about pressing global issues such as inclusive development, the climate crisis, pandemic recovery, peace, democracy, and sustainable societies, and prove that they are ready to tackle these challenges threatening their communities and young people in every part of the world. At the heart of every global threat is a failure of leadership. Therefore, we at One Young World identify, promote, and connect the world's most impactful young leaders to create a better world with more responsible, more effective leadership. By recognizing impressive youth-led initiatives through our programs, such as our Lead 2030 Challenges, which is the world's biggest cash fund for young leaders working on the Sustainable Development Goals, we harness the expertise of young people in accelerating global action and connecting to a global network of over 13,000 like-minded young leaders in every country in the world. One Young World, along with USAID, is committed to amplifying youth voices all over the world. The future is yours, and you should have the future that you want.
Wow, so wonderful. We are truly excited to have such strong support and backing from so many global organizations dedicated to supporting youth. Make sure you check the chat box for links on how to join these initiatives. Now, I'd like to mention USAID's platform for connecting young changemakers called Youth Lead. Together, let's take a look at how to join.
My name is Paola Martinez. I'm Venezuela's Youth Lead Ambassador, and I work as a human rights activist here in my country. If you're a young change maker that is making a positive impact in your community, you should join Youth Lead platform.
As we move to close out today's event, I'm pleased to welcome Christian Lord to the stage to provide some closing remarks. Christian Lord is President and CEO of IREX, an independent nonprofit organization dedicated to building a more just, prosperous and inclusive world by empowering youth, cultivating leaders, strengthening institutions, and extending access to quality education and information. Dr. Lord previously served as acting president and executive vice president of the United States Institute of Peace, a congressionally created organization that prevents, mitigates, and resolves violent conflict worldwide. She has also served as an executive vice president and director of studies at the Center for New American Security, editor-in-chief of 110 CNAAS publications, and as fellow at the Brookings Institution. Dr. Lord serves as co-chair of the Alliance for International Youth Development, a member of the board of directors for the U.S. Global Leadership Coalition, and a lifetime member of the Council on Foreign Relations. Please welcome Dr. Lord to the stage.
Thank you so much, Gael, for that very kind introduction. I also want to thank Making Sense and YEO 2030 for hosting this terrific event today. And I want to encourage all of our audience members to join the YEO 2030 Summit on May 19th. On behalf of the Alliance for International Youth Development, a coalition of more than a dozen mission-focused organizations that advocate for youth development, I want to congratulate USAID on the launch of this newly updated youth policy. It may not have made the headlines today, but in my humble opinion, it really should have. This is a momentous occasion because if we truly commit to and act on the recommendations in this policy, the consequences are going to stretch for decades. I mean, today we were talking about solutions at a time when we see a lot of problems. I also want to thank USAID leadership, especially Deputy Administrator Coleman and the whole youth team at USAID, including former agency youth coordinator Mike McCabe, for including AIYD and many other stakeholders throughout the process of the policy redesign, and for listening to our recommendations over the past several years, including our youth policy review in 2018. We so appreciate your commitment to evidence, to learning, to reflection, and we really hope you saw the benefits as well. It has been so rewarding to see USAID's growing prioritization of youth development over the last 10 years. There is now much broader recognition that the world's youth population is not just massive, the largest in human history, but also that youth are disproportionately impacted by conflict, poverty, pandemics, and humanitarian crises. In addition, it is simply not possible to make progress on the most important issues of our time or achieve the sustainable development goals without supporting, partnering with, and catalyzing the leadership of youth. This updated policy is another leap forward with a vision not just for serving youth, but for truly elevating youth leadership. Youth are already leading today, and they're ready to co-lead with all of us. And this comes across very clearly in the policy, and we commend you for that. Youth leadership is everywhere if we look for it. In Ukraine, for instance, youth are leading humanitarian response efforts, organizing to tell Ukraine's story to the world, and serving their communities. They're not waiting to be asked. As one of my IREX Ukraine colleagues told me recently, we're seeing the payoff from all the investments that have been made in youth, and it is really inspiring all of us. And I know you got a glimpse of that leadership this morning when Administrator Power talked with Taras Durkac, who coordinates a platform for youth in Ukraine that now provides psychosocial support services for more than 50,000 people per week. Yet another example comes from Tunisia at the height of the COVID-19 pandemic. Again, young people did not sit back. Youth leader Firas Bashaki collected donations for people in need within his community with the support of the governor. He told us, so many people in El Kef are daily workers, and I knew I had to do something to supplement their lost earnings. For them, it was a matter of life or death. He saw a problem and he acted, leveraging the leadership skills he'd strengthened through the Ma'an program and partnering with adults. Youth globally are starting businesses and social enterprises. They're taking on leadership roles in government. They're driving movements for social and climate justice. I know our community will deeply appreciate the new policy's sustained focus on positive youth development as a guiding approach, with its focus on seeing youth as whole people and building on their strengths. Our community will share the policy's commitment to being truly inclusive of all youth, with a special emphasis on the most marginalized and those who have been unjustly excluded. The policy's new emphasis on mental health as well as physical health is such a significant advancement, and it's one we are eager to see translated into meaningful support. We also share the policy's commitment to localization, to system strengthening, and addressing youth and adult power differentials. We applaud the focus on ages and stages, which recognizes that youth, their needs, and their potential contributions change substantially as they transition from children to adolescents to young adults. AIYD advocated vigorously for this approach, and we deeply appreciate that USAID was listening. In these and so many other ways, we share the policy's values and will work to achieve its vision. And we look forward to partnering with USAID and other US government agencies on initiatives like Global Lead, Youth Power, Youth Excel, the Young African Leadership Initiative, the execution of the Global Fragility Act, and a wide range of other youth initiatives and activities supported by USAID missions and bureaus. AIYD has long championed many of the issues we've discussed here today, providing space for youth to lead, not just in jumpstarting new initiatives or implementing projects, but also in data collection and research, agenda setting, decision-making. This includes youth-led funding decisions, which you heard a bit about today. And we stand ready to partner with USAID and youth around the world to achieve its expansive vision for youth leadership. To repeat, when we look at the most important objectives in the world, achieving inclusive economic growth, challenging authoritarianism and strengthening democracy, taking action on climate change, building trusted public institutions that serve others, reducing violent conflict, and promoting peaceful, tolerant, secure communities, we see that none of them can be achieved if we do not focus on youth, if we do not have youth at the table, and if we do not have youth leading. USAID has set an ambitious standard for us all, and to our colleagues at USAID, you have made a powerful commitment with this policy. To really meet the moment though, to seize fully the opportunity, this vision must translate into action. And this is the beginning, not the high point. Until we all act on this policy, it will just be a document. So I want to close by commending USAID again for this truly exciting step forward. And on behalf of the Alliance for International Youth Development, I want to convey that we, your partners, are deeply invested in carrying these priorities forward in elevating youth around the world. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Christine Lord, for being such an inspiration, and for everybody who joined today, the Administrator Power, the Congress and global youth leaders, and all of speakers, and all of you who are joining us from all around the world. It was really exciting to have you join us for this memorable event in history. Please make sure to check out the USAID's renewed youth policy. It was truly a pleasure to be with you. And as we say in Madagascar, Fedumo.